That's what we're going to give people this year. We already got one in.
Nice.
Hi, Sam. Oh, he's on audio.
Hey, Eric.
How's it going?
Oh, not bad. How are you?
All right. Getting ready to go here.
Yeah, I'll unfortunately only be able to be here for a couple minutes, but
It's ridiculous. What do you have better to do?
I
I like your profile picture, though.
You what?
I like your profile picture.
Oh, yeah.
In my beer garden.
Pretty cool shop I go to sometimes.
I'll do an OG if that's okay, please. Probably.
Hey, how are you?
What's up, Jason?
I was like, I know him.
I think you're going to see some familiar Pop saying he's going to zoom in.
You did.
My goodness. You should upgrade next year.
You have different tiers of membership.
One. This normally would have done.
That's awesome. That was awesome. That sounds awesome.
But that's the plan was to do it. Obviously, I mean, that's the fun of it. You know, they do it. Yeah, so obviously you can't do that now. But, so this worked out great. This is,
Yeah, it would be a lot more fun to have a party here.
I know. You know what? You created it. Desperate times call for desperate measures. Oh, my wife did.
Nice.
So they get that, and then they get lottery, gold. Yeah, so like they can get a free beer.
Oh, okay.
So they can come in just instead of like a birthday beer.
Nice. How many years is that?
So the first round we sold it out in a month. And then the second round, I think it was first round So I'm maybe I got it.
Yeah. People you mentioned rarely come out, right?
Yeah, just a lot of that stuff. Like, I got some buddies from this that have done it.
One guy you mentioned, I forgot what his name was. He came here. He loved it.
Filipino.
Yes.
The guy that came,
Yeah.
the first guy.
Yeah, the first guy, exactly.
He's a buddy, so I've known him since high school. And yeah, this guy really. Let me see.
Yeah. And then there's one guy. Oktoberfest prowler. I don't know if you saw on the receipt. There's one Oktoberfest prowler, and then
Somebody told me who it was. Probably started.
did you hear District 50 or District 99 rules are going? Yeah. Yeah, I was wondering.
Oh, we got some waves. All right. What's up, guys? Can you all hear me okay? Is there a big echo in here? Or is it okay? Yeah, I see some. Okay. Too bad. There's nothing I can do about it. Well, welcome. We might have a few more people jump in at some point. So as you can see, I'm at the wonderful Goldfinger Brewing Company, socially distanced from Tom Beckmann.
Hi, guys.
So we are, yeah, I feel like this is like a Monday Night Football game. It's like the plexiglass between us and do all that. Okay, so thank you everybody for doing this. So most of you are first round draft picks. A couple of you guys, we did invite the second rounders as well. But those of the first round obviously got a chance to come in. I see Mike just held up his crawler. Y'all got to come in, get a crawler, get yourself the appropriate glassware, right, to take home. And this was in lieu of our member party. So circumstances as they are, of course, stinks that we weren't able to do that. We thought about trying to do something, but as we know, the fun of that event is the bottle share and the camaraderie and being able to go from table to table and interact with each other. And it's really wouldn't have been, we don't think, quite as much fun as it should have been. So we thought this was a nice backup, and Tom was nice enough to agree to do this for us. So logistically, it was a little pain in the butt for them, but they made it work. And show of hands, I know we'll probably have more people jumping on. How many of you had been to Goldfinger beforehand? How many of you have been here before? Oh, all right, so
Nice.
so no new faces. All right, perfect. Judging by the squares here in the Brady Bunch squares, I know there are a lot more people not on who actually came in to get stuff too. So hopefully we got a lot of new people out for you guys, some people in the community who are able to be introduced to you guys.
We definitely did. Thank you, Eric, for kind of directing people over to our brewery. We're only 3 months old now, as of yesterday. So it's always nice to see some people from the community, especially people we recognize, but also to kind of tell our story to brand new people who, there were definitely a bunch of those who hadn't been here yet.
So when
Thank
when you opened, you thought for sure you were going to have to redo your business plan every week for the first 3, 4, 8 months.
Totally, yeah. That was built into the business plan from day one, for sure. Pandemic, yep, absolutely.
There are a lot of businesses, a lot of breweries that a lot of people here go to that we see pivot. What was the biggest challenge for you guys getting into this and when you opened?
The first major challenge was just during the construction phase, because we had broken ground last September, and we were planning to open in March. And of course, we all know what happened in March. So once that hit, that kind of delayed our build out, which kind of sacrificed some of those nice prime summer months that we all strive for. So that was probably the biggest challenge, but now it's just kind of trying to make people feel comfortable outside and adapting to the ever-changing mandates. So we're doing it. We have a nice tent outdoors and people seem to enjoy it. So we're grateful that people are braving the weather and still wanting to come have some beers.
Well, this week's going to be a good week to go do more of that. We're going to get some Indian summer, a little 60-degree action.
Oh, yeah.
So get out, support all your small businesses, get out to your breweries, get out to your bottle shop, get out to your restaurants here locally. Be sure to stock up before things end. Let's talk about you guys. Goldfinger, what's the name?
So Goldfinger was the name of my ancestors who used to be brewing equipment manufacturers, brewers, and hops dealers back in 19th century Poland and Czech Republic. So the funny thing is, I was homebrewing with my brother when we discovered we had this lineage, and we started to dig up a lot of really cool history. When you think about the brewing world back in 19th century Poland, it's nothing like it was today. Yet the Goldfingers had a pretty wide span. One of the coolest stories we have, which if you've been here, you haven't seen it yet, but in the future we will have this on display. They actually made a sample valve, which when I take you into the brewery, I'll show you what I'm referencing. But it's essentially a valve for a brewer to taste the beer at various stages of the fermentation process. And they actually manufactured those back in the 19th century. We have our hands on one that they manufactured with the Marcus Goldfinger signature on it. But the coolest part about the story is it was found in some remote mountains of Poland by some guy only 10 years ago with a metal detector. He just dug it up. So it's kind of cool to think pre-cars that a Krakow brewery managed to have some of their equipment all the way across the country.
How did it find its way here?
So the guy posted it on a brewing history page in Poland. I have a cousin in Warsaw, and while he was doing all this research, he wrote, he's like, hey, that's my ancestors' thing. And they were like, okay, well, you can have it. And then he sent it. Actually, it was his gift to me and my wife for our wedding. So he sent it to us. So we have it. We'll have it on display in the entryway in the near future.
All right, I didn't want to put the brakes on when you were talking, but did you say hop stealer?
Hops dealer.
Stealer. I thought you said hop stealer. I'm like, wait a minute. We just went right through that one a little too fast. Okay. All right.
Hop stealers.
So okay. Just making sure I heard that right. All right. So they pretty much did everything from farm to table.
They did. There's some really cool artifacts that we have on display here, but also additional stuff that we have found where it actually describes they had a brew pub on St. Philip Street in Krakow. Building is still there. In fact, those of you who have the Pils glass, did anybody get this one? Nice. So if you look on the bookends of where it says brewing company, this is also in our logo. There's this little floral pattern, and it's inspired by the entry foyer to the original Goldfinger Brewery in Krakow. So we have a picture on display here. But it's so cool because you can read about like the literal meals people used to have while drinking Goldfinger beer in like the 1870s, like schnitzel and sausages and sauerkraut while having this beer. So it's pretty cool.
Were you aware of your family history with this kind of growing up?
No, this was something discovered about 10, 15 years ago. With the advent of all the genealogy tests, we actually found distant cousins that we're now very close with, and this was the result of that. The funny thing is, I was brewing in it. I was wondering why I loved it so much, and I guess you could just say it was in my blood.
Were you brewing before you found out about this stuff?
I was.
That's awesome.
I was brewing before I found out about it. Yeah.
Okay. So at any point, did you think about, you know what, we want to branch out outside of lagers, or why did you just decide? Obviously, that's part of the brewing heritage in Krakow and a lot of European places. Why the thought to say, hey, we're going to stick to the family recipes?
Well,
Or the family history.
yeah, it's sort of a mix of a lot of considerations. First and foremost, being that there's so many good other styles of beer out there in the craft world. I mean, my first professional job after I graduated from the Master Brewers course was at Lagunitas. So the IPA king of, you could argue, the world now that they're owned by Heineken. And it's not like we're brewing lagers because we don't like other beers. It's because a mix of my heritage, my education in Munich, Germany, where I got to practice brewing, and just beer styles that I love, and trying to identify sort of a niche in craft beer where I think in general craft beer stands to improve a little bit, which is on these kind of traditionally brewed lager beers. And we seek to essentially educate people who don't know that lagers can actually have flavor. So that's kind of our goal, and we're going to stick to it. I mean, you're well aware we just did a collaboration brew with Hop Butcher, and I've had a lot of people who love our lagers ask me, what, why, like how does that work? What, Hop Butcher's an IPA brewer, but that's the cool thing. You can combine two worlds, and that's what we did in this beer that we're excited about.
Where did you get the recipes?
So it was just me developing them at home, really.
Yeah.
The cool thing, if you guys, who got the original lager? Nice. So that beer I had developed over several years. And when I say develop, I mean, I had some of the most like tricked out homebrew equipment you could get, because one of the things we do at Goldfinger is naturally carbonate beer to get a really nice soft mouth feel.
What's that again?
The CO2 is coming from the actual. So I had these little fermenters at home that had these little I developed that, and my wife and I actually debuted that beer at our wedding. So we brewed it together, and people seem to like it. And, you got to wonder if they're just saying they like it because we're the couple getting married. But no, we like the beer, and that's kind of how I developed that one.
Well, now you figure it out because people buy it, so you don't have to worry about people being polite.
Exactly.
You talk about natural carbonation. Explain the difference between that and something else, like a store-bought beer.
Sure. So obviously one of the byproducts of fermentation, two of them are alcohol, which we all love, and then carbon dioxide. Most breweries will allow that carbon dioxide to blow into the atmosphere, and then later, right before they put the beer either in cans or kegs, they'll hook up a CO2 cylinder that you would find at a store, and they bubble the carbon dioxide into the beer at that stage. There's nothing wrong with that, but since it's produced CO2 not from fermentation, the bubbles tend to be a little bit bigger. And what it does is it adds a little bit of a bite to the mouthfeel as you drink. And frankly, what I've discovered is it causes me to burp a lot sooner when I'm drinking beer than a naturally carbonated beer. So the difference is we allow some of the CO2 to bubble out during the first part of the fermentation, but then we close the tank off and we just start letting the CO2 build up while it's still fermenting. And then that's what ultimately leads to the carbonation of the beer. Much finer bubbles, nice, softer mouthfeel.
We'll get to the bubbles and the pouring in a little bit. You mentioned Lagunitas. Where else did you stop? What did you learn at some of these stops?
Lagunitas was an awesome company to work for. I still like their beer. I mean, there it was mostly like how to handle a lot of processing. It was such a large scale. I came in there with very little professional experience, and small things like how do you handle a hose that weighs 40 pounds and hook it from one port to the next. That was where I learned that, and I had to learn it. The size was like quadruple what I do here. So now I can pretty much lift everything with my pinkies at this point. But that was really beneficial there. Lagunitas did a great job of hiring people who had a formal brewing education, like myself, and so I learned a lot from a lot of those people. And then the only thing that I didn't like about that was that we were just making the same beers all the time, that I couldn't actually have my creative input on that. So I was, funny enough, interested in brewing at the Hofbrauhaus in Rosemont because I loved lagers, and the current brewer at Hofbrauhaus was the former brewer at Emmett's in Downers Grove. And he wanted me to be an assistant brewer. I was a brewer at Lagunitas. I didn't want to take a step down. So he actually referred me to Emmett's here in DG that had a vacancy. So I thought that was an awesome opportunity for me to be on a much smaller scale, have a little bit of creative input, but just kind of run the show myself. So I did that for a couple of years here, and that was probably the most educational 2 years I've had in brewing, because the equipment is 35 years old, and I spent more time as a mechanic than an actual brewer. But it really prepares you for running your own brewery. So I'm very grateful for that opportunity.
Mike Crowley, look nice. Digging the, that's very artistic, very nice.
Nice.
Good carbonation there. Education. What was it like for you? What did you have to do? What did you, and not have to do? I mean, there's a lot of people that just go into brewing, but obviously
Right.
You went through a much more tedious and labor-intensive process to get it right. What was that like?
It was a lot of fun, first of all. Maybe more
Tedious,
drink. Yeah.
Wrong word.
When I got into brewing, I read as many books about it as possible. But when I had decided, I was a sales manager at the time, when I decided that I wanted to dedicate my career toward reviving an old family tradition, I knew that enrolling in the Siebel Master Brewers course, which is a joint course between the Siebel Institute here in Chicago, the oldest brewing school in the country, and a school called Domens in Munich, Germany. I knew that was sort of a much more thorough path that I could take to really understand brewing. So it consisted of 3 months of 5 days a week, 8-hour lectures here in Chicago. Some of the top minds in the brewing industry were my teachers, and we had to learn about chemistry, microbiology, all sorts of things, really everything related to brewing. And then we spent the other 3 months of the course in Munich at a school that had its own brewery, its own bottling line, and its own laboratory. And there we would practice what we had learned. And then we have to finish an exam. We have to pass a final exam to get our diploma as a certified master brewer, which that was a little scary because I had spent a lot of time in Munich also trying all the beers that I could, and maybe not studying as much as I should have before that. Research, right?
Research.
So I was cramming with some of the other guys, and the final exam for the microbiology one, you go into the lab, and there are these 2 German professors with their lab coats on, all formal, and they hand you a slide, and you have to put it under the microscope. You have to identify what microbe the slide is. You have to identify where you would find it in the brewery, what kind of flavors or influence it would have in the processing, and you have to just do it on the fly like that. And then you have to go into the other lab, and you have to do chemistry titrations of different water, and all just on the fly, and then a 3-hour written exam. So it was intense, but I graduated and we celebrated.
I can imagine. So you all thought it was so easy to just become a brewer, right? No problem. Well, to do it right, definitely. There's a key to that. Do you want to take us through the brewery right
Sure.
now? Do you want to? I don't know if you want to get a laptop or a phone or what you want to do. Because maybe we'll have you jump in and then you could self-guide it yourself. And the question thing, the group chat's open. So if anybody has questions, feel free to throw them in there. We can hold on to them, parking lot them until the end or until there's a good spot, or he can address it as he's going too. So not a problem at all. Other than Sam, mute your mic, which we took care of that. Thanks, Eric. So we'll have to get to Glassware. Oh, yeah, there. Oh, did you jump in the same one?
Eric, I say we make a toast to Sean Connery and James Bond and Goldfinger.
Yes.
How often do you get that mistake?
Oh, yeah, I'll mute here. Oh yeah, it's either James Bond, which by the way, that is my favorite Bond, or the ska band Goldfinger, which I was also into back in the day. And if you've been here more than once, the chances are you might have heard it playing, because I tend to like to play that. Some of my staff is like, oh no, ska again. I'm like, come on, this is fun.
It's the narrative. Well, if you want to take your phone, I'd say
right.
You can walk over, get right over there. I'll let you go, and then you can unmute and get over there. Are you in?
You see me?
Oh, there you are. I'll unmute you now. Oh, you're on.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, sir. Can you hear?
All right. So welcome to the, here, let me flip the camera. Welcome to the brewery. So I'm going to get started from the beginning of the process. So I'll just quickly take you guys through how we do this thing. So behind this door is our grain mill. So my job as a brewer is to extract all of the sugars from malted barley, because ultimately I make food for the yeast to consume, and they're the ones that take care of the rest. So that starts by cracking open the grain in this room. That allows me to then push it all the way up to, we're gonna go up to the brew deck. It comes through this, the grain comes through this pipe and gets fed down into this. This is called a mash tun. And it's basically like me making a giant batch of oatmeal. This is where I mix it with some hot water to extract all of the sugars that I can. Once that process is done, I will transfer over to this second tank, which is called the lauter tun. If you can see on the bottom, it's like a perforated screen. And what happens in this, and I'll actually move this around because it looks pretty cool. So those are actually knives. What they do is they cut these little channels in the grain bed that allows all the liquid to seep through, but the screens on the bottom keep the solids from the grain behind, because ultimately I just want to boil liquid. I don't want to boil any of the grains. Once I do that process and I've separated the grains from the liquid, I transfer over to this tank. And this is basically just a giant pot. But this is where I add hops at various times to get different characters. So if you're drinking the pills, that tends to be a little more bitter, more aromatic, and that's just related to the types of hops and how many hops I add throughout the process. The last step then happens here. So who is waving to me? So I have to cool down because I'm boiling this liquid that's referred to as wort. I have to cool it down because I'm about to introduce it to the yeast. And the yeast are living organisms, and I don't want to kill them by subjecting them to boiling wort. So I hook up one of these big hoses that I was referring to. I'm in the middle of cleaning one of these tanks, so that's what all these hoses are doing. But I run one of these hoses to any of these 3 fermenters here, and that's where I introduce the wort or the yeast to the wort. So right now I have a batch actively fermenting, you can see. So going back to that natural carbonation, like I said, we'll let some of that CO2 dissipate, but eventually we'll close the tank off and let all of the rest of the CO2 that's created during fermentation to build up. Then the last part of the process is I take it from this tank to one. Oh, look, I have an audience here. I transfer it to one of these tanks. You'll notice that these tanks are a different shape. Unlike these that are vertical, these are horizontal. That's very deliberate, especially in lager beer production, because lager yeast, what makes a lager is the type of yeast that I use. Lager yeast does all of its work on the bottom of the tank. So by spreading out all the weight of this liquid horizontally, I put a lot less pressure on the yeast. So I create a lot less off flavors, and it's what ultimately results in the really kind of soft, drinkable qualities that our beer has. So I'll show you one example of this special valve. See the bubbles coming out of there. This is actively letting some of the bubbles escape as we naturally carbonate the beer. Then the last part is I'll fill all the beer after it's been in these tanks for at least a month, month and a half, sometimes 2 months, depending on the style. I will fill a bunch of kegs that we have stored in our walk-in cooler. And then from those kegs, we go through the wall and pour the beer out of these special Czech side pull faucets that are from Prague. And they're deliberate because they give that really nice creamy quality to the foam. If you've had a beer here in person, you've definitely experienced that. So that's the tour. Good?
Yeah.
All right.
Will that work? All right. Well, that's, I don't know, we can get super deep into all the brewing process, I'm sure. Hey, Mike, I'm going to unmute you because you have a question. There we go. So, Mike Crowley, go ahead, ask your question.
So Tom, are you going to go, I guess, expand beyond your heritage, I guess, in terms of the types of beers you're going to, I know there's a Baltic Porter, you got a collaboration, but your bread and butter Pilsner lagers, are you going to go beyond that, or are you going to kind of go, step by step with that?
Yeah, we certainly want to expand. One of the biggest challenges with the way that we do our beer is that we lager it for the traditional period of time. So that's a month and a half, 2 months. So in order for me to do a lot of variety, I need double, triple the amount of tanks that I currently have. So that's been one of our limiting factors in terms of different beers that we can produce at one at any given time. But as you said, we have a Baltic Porter coming. We have definitely on the more experimental side of our lagers, which is a hoppy, really delicious aromatic lager we brewed with Hop Butcher. One of our first seasonals was a New Zealand lager. It was another experimental batch. So we're just going to kind of try to strike a balance between always producing our core beers so that you can come here and our Vienna lager will taste the same as it did several months ago. You can rely on that consistency. And then slowly we'll start to introduce more varieties. You mentioned something about what kind of influence COVID has had on us. That is another one. We had to make a decision a month ago whether we were going to expand our lagering capacity or not. And we decided to just be cautious going into this winter. We don't know what the demand is going to be like, and it requires a lot of capital to get more tanks in. So we're just going to kind of ride this, having 1 or 2 seasonals throughout the winter. And then hopefully come next year, be able to really ramp up. Regarding styles, one of the ones I'm most excited for in the future is a Doppelbock. Happens to be one of my favorite styles of beer, and that will be coming in late January, early February.
What is that? For
It's
people that know it.
a Doppelbock is often referred to as liquid bread. The style originated by the monks, actually. So when they were fasting, they couldn't eat anything, but they could have their allotment of beer. So they brewed a really big, alcoholic, malty, delicious lager, and that's what we plan to do too.
Are those the ones that they would put in the caves too? Are those like the Marzens, basically?
Yeah.
Because some of those are like spring beer too that they put in there.
Exactly.
They use the natural cold of the caves to
Yeah.
ferment.
Yeah. It's funny you bring that up because before refrigeration, that was really the only way to kind of maintain a fairly consistent temperature. You go dig deep enough in a cave, and you don't have big temperature fluctuations. And temperature is a huge thing on the quality of beer. You need consistent temperature. So we tried to mimic that process with our Oktoberfest this year because traditionally the Germans actually created a purity law for brewing beer, and they banned the brewing of beer during the summer because they realized they would turn out really sour and disgusting because of the heat that would promote growth of other microbes that you don't want. So they had to brew like their last beer in March, hence Marzen, which is March in German. So they brew a big kind of heavier, more alcoholic beer and store it in the caves all summer long, and then tap it in late September. So we did the same thing. My equipment wasn't here installed until early April, so I missed it by a little bit, but I brewed that my third batch, and we left it lagering for 5 months in our tank until we tapped it in September.
How many of you could be patient enough for 5 months to wait for that beer? I don't think I could do that. You talked about how important some of the temperature is to beer. One of the underrated ingredients, I mean, it's the biggest ingredient, but very underrated in how it's used, is water. How much do you guys treat your water here? Chicago water is one of the best in the world for brewing beer. Do you have to treat it here?
We wouldn't have to necessarily. For what we're doing, we do, but it's fairly minimal. Lake Michigan water is awesome.
Yeah.
Especially for making IPAs. It's good. Calcium and magnesium are the good things in there that you want. What we do is we put it through a really robust carbon filter. It's a huge filter. I think Brita times 1,000. And then we actually soften it. The reason we do that is because I build up a water profile from the soft water to mimic the water profile of whatever style I'm making. So our original lager water profile matches almost identically the water that you would find in Munich, Germany. Wow. So we do play around with it quite a bit. But yeah, Lake Michigan water is awesome.
Yeah.
And it's really consistent too. So we're fortunate for that.
Yeah, definitely. All right, so we're going to have to qualify the next question. That there are a couple of village officials on the Zoom. Why Downers Grove?
There are officials in here. I recognize some.
And thank you.
Downers Grove, I grew up here. I moved here when I was 4 years old. I went to Highland Elementary, Herrick Middle School, Downers Grove North. My parents still live here. I moved elsewhere after college. I went to Northwestern, so I lived in Evanston and then the city for a while. And my parents still are here in the same house I grew up in, and we love this town. My wife and I actually live here now. We live literally across the street from my childhood home. That was a little difficult to get my wife to agree to, but she ultimately did.
Who may or may not have just walked by.
Yeah, who may or may not have just given me stink eye. But it's a town that I hold dear to my heart. Plus, I wanted to do this in an area that would mean something more than just kind of finding some random place. And we came upon this building because my wife and I used to live in the downtown Downers Grove area, and we used to take our dog for walks around town. And I just remember walking past this building. It used to be Permaseal, thinking this building, if they were ever to leave, like we could convert this into a really cool looking brewery. But I knew it was a long shot, except one day we're walking and I saw a real estate sign in the window. I was like, no freaking way. And now we're here in the old Permaseal building.
Well, Downers is, I think, been pretty good to you, judging from the crowds that have been outside. And again, we've got a lot of people from Downers out here. That's why it was such a nice fit for us. We haven't been able to really get inside for a whole lot. What else will people be able to do once we're past all of this inside?
So if you've been here, you've probably, at least if you went to the restroom, seen the tap room to some extent. We designed this to be kind of a modern take on some of the beer halls that we saw in Europe. So we have a lot of the long communal tables. Of course, that was a miscalculation. Nothing communal anymore. But in the future, I'm very confident that we'll all be able to cram together again on these long tables, talking about anything and everything with friends, family, you name it, clinking mugs of lager. And if you get bored with the conversation, we have a game room just adjacent to the main tap room where there's darts and shuffleboard. So it'll be fun eventually.
Steel tip dartboard over there.
Steel tip,
nice,
yes.
Which is very European. Gotta have that. No, there's no plastic tips over there. You want to score, there's no slop.
Nope.
On those parts. You actually got to hit it and stick it.
Yep.
Questions? Anybody else? Oh, I see a very, yeah. All right, I'm going to unmute you there, buddy. Go ahead, Billy.
Hey, I was just asking any possibility of live music coming up.
I would love to have live music. I don't know how soon we can do it, but it's funny you mentioned that. There's a music shop right here on Fairview, just within walking distance of us. And we've had some talks with them about some of their students coming and performing, or some of their artists. So I would say definitely in the future. When that is honestly, Eric can attest, we don't like to commit to anything at this point.
Well, we'll put a plug in for Billy. Billy is a very good live entertainer, and he plays a lot of places around here, and we're fortunate to have him in our month.
Awesome.
Coming around here a lot.
Oh,
so.
I don't even have my beer. Sounds good. Let's stay in touch.
Excellent beer, by the way. Oh my God, this is great.
Thank you.
Other questions, other comments? Oh, you know what we didn't talk about is I had you all get glassware. I mean, that's part of it, right? I know how important it is to Tom. This is why we were like, all right, if you're going to get a beer here, you're going to get the right glass. What's the importance of glassware in the beers that you do?
Sure. So the original lager, we went through a lot of iterations of what.
Do you want me to get you? I can go get you a beer. You
Yeah, we should probably get
You
another
could
beer.
speak. I'll get you one. Which one do you want?
I'll do the original, please. I'll do a baby.
Is your assistant brewer need to leave?
Yeah, you can go. Sorry. Thanks, Jeremy.
Staff.
So the we always knew we wanted to have a mug for the original lager. It's just one of those beers that it's kind of funny. The style, it's a Helles style lager. It's not supposed to be too remarkable, actually. It's not supposed to make you hyperanalyze it when you drink it. It's one of those that the more you drink, the more you realize how pleasant and good it is. And by the time you're on your third or fourth half liter and you're ready to order another one, that's when you realize how good the beer actually is. It's very different from a Belgian style or an IPA for that matter, where you're really trying to analyze all of the aroma.
It takes a while to pour the beers.
So yeah, so because of that purpose, we wanted something very conducive to drinking a lot of. So it's very typical of the Czech and the Germans to have a stein or a mug like this. So this is a very classic Czech style mug. And really all that it's supposed to do, it has a wider mouth, is just to make it easier to drink more of it faster, to be honest. That's what this.
That's very technical. Did you learn that in school?
Yes, I had to go to school to learn that one. The Pils is a much different situation. The Pils is very aromatic beer. And typically with aromatic beers, the way that you actually get aroma is from the bubbles popping at the surface of the beer. So by having this thin mouth on the Pils glass, it concentrates all of those bubbles into a smaller area so that you can just put your nose right over it and get that aroma directly into your nose. We do a process here. It's the slow pour process, and it takes 4 to 5 minutes for the beer to actually be poured.
That's why I brought an empty glass. I didn't think everybody wanted to wait. Sorry.
Right.
It's worth the wait.
It's definitely worth the wait, because what it does is it opens up the beer. It lets some of those bubbles break, but then deliver that aroma. And it also slightly lowers the carbonation level on the beer. So it makes it super easy to drink. Like me and Allison, my wife, were talking about how in this glass, it really only takes us maybe 3 sips to finish this entire thing. But that's the purpose of this really thin glass. And for those of you really analyzing the glass, on the bottom of it, if you have this, we also have an etching of our floral pattern, the same as in our logo.
That will collect carbonation, won't it? That's
it
inside,
will.
Right? So it'll collect the carbonation.
Exactly. So Eric's exactly right. It's called a nucleation point. It's just a point for the bubbles to rise up from.
That's awesome.
We have one other glass that is more of a like seasonal one that some of you have seen. Let me grab it.
So the key here is when you come, and if you want one of these, you order one of these at the same time. And then you get this one, and then this one will come out to you when you're done with this. Did we follow? That's the pro way to, I'm just speaking for Tom. I'm not quite sure if that's true, but that's how I do it. Oh, here it is.
So here's a tulip. And this glass is what the Baltic Porter will be poured in. If you see on the back, once again, the floral pattern. This is actually the fill line. So any of you who've been to Europe know that a lot of these beer glasses actually have the fill line on them, so that you know you're not being cheated out of a certain volume of beer. So our fill line is our floral pattern. This is for higher alcohol beers and for more hop forward beers. So our New Zealand lager, which was more hop forward, was also served in this. And once again, it's a similar concept, a more narrow mouth to help concentrate all those bubbles to deliver that aroma.
Very cool. What did we miss? We're still here for questions. Tom, what did I miss? What else do you want to share?
Well, I was going to mention something about the foam that you see at our brewery. A lot of that not only comes from the brewing practice, but the actual pouring, the faucets that we have, those check faucets, if you noticed earlier, they actually open from the side as opposed to from, straight toward you. Inside of each spout is a little screen, and it creates this turbulence that makes this beautiful cap of soft foam, but it creates what the Czechs refer to as wet foam. So if you've ever had a beer that was just all foam, it's like really bitter and unpleasant. Well, because of the pouring process, if you just have the foam, it's actually kind of sweet and really pleasant. So in the Czech Republic, a lot of women at the end of the night will actually order what's referred to as the milk pour. And it's literally an entire mug of just the foam, because it helps kind of the digestion a little bit. It's sort of like a soft finish to a night of drinking. So if you wanna try it, you can come in. We'll be happy to pour you a milk pour.
Probably can't go to another round and ask for that. You're not going to get that anywhere else.
Yeah, you need these kind of faucets to actually be able to do it. That's for sure. Maybe we'll hook one up.
Yeah, that'd be fun. Any plans with all of this craziness? So we did talk about the COVID and all the ridiculousness and changing plans. Other plans that you're changing on the fly, or anything else that you're planning to do because of this or because of winter?
You guys are the first to hear that we will be canning our beer in the not so distant future.
Nice.
We want to provide a better option for people, and we hope to have them by the holidays, so that if you want to give somebody a gift of a 4-pack or something.
Wink, wink, nudge.
Yeah.
Nice.
So we're working on that right now. And the other thing we're doing is we're going to start during the winter months doing beer delivery. So one good thing that came out of the ILCC since COVID is that they actually allow us to literally drop beer off at your front door. So we will be doing that this winter as well.
I see a lot of local people here whose zip codes are going to qualify for that delivery. So be sure to keep that in mind. That's awesome. Very cool. I mean, I say it's awesome. I mean, it's a great, we talked a little bit before we got on this about how much we all have to pivot, rethink how we do things and come up with new and creative ways to do things. So this is a byproduct of that, right?
Absolutely.
So just doing these types of things and figuring out new ways to get your beer in front of people and in front of a new audience, and have people come out and make it as easy as possible for them to buy it.
Exactly.
What we are all fighting with at this point.
And who knows, maybe some of our cans will be found at Orange Brew.
You have to come to me. I send them right 3 blocks away. You wouldn't believe that's one of the biggest questions we get asked. Do you have Goldfinger? We do get a lot of that question,
awesome.
And I think a lot of people are looking for cans too. So
good.
It is kind of funny, but yeah, I always kind of smile. I'm like, they're just right down the street. You can go right over there and see them. So hopefully those folks are coming over. Yeah. That's good to hear. Yeah, that's canning will be big, and I know a lot of people in the industry will be able to get that beer out in a lot of other places, and all that does is it's great marketing for you. So that's great. Right here in Downers Grove, which is really cool.
Yep.
Anything else? Said we usually try to keep these to an hour or less. We're jumping in over there. Anybody? So how many people got the lager? I'm curious of the people that got on here. Lagers. Anybody on? We didn't have a lot of pills, did we? A couple people had the pills.
Couple pills. Any Vienna?
Who got Vienna?
Yeah, nice.
There was one person who was lucky enough to get an Oktoberfest. That wasn't anybody on here, was it? It came in right before those kegs blew.
Yep.
One person. All right. Well, hey, I just want to say on behalf of Orange Brew, first of all, thanks to Tom. Thanks to Allison. Thanks to their staff that did this for the past 3 weeks for us. was really cool. We were glad to be a part of it, and we were glad that they were willing to do it. I want to say thank you on behalf of Orange Brew for being in our mug club. It's been huge for us. Obviously, it's super important as we keep moving forward, and we try to do what we can to make it worthwhile to you guys and still give you a community to be a part of. That's why we have the Facebook group, why we do these types of things. It's really fun to see everybody, even though we can't see everybody in person right now. We're going to give Tom, speaking of first, Tom is going to get our first Mug Club gift. This is the giveaway for next year. So this is a opener, if you guys are not familiar. Bottle opener. I'm on the wrong side because I'm moving backwards. And then it's got a magnet inside, so you can put your bottle cap on it if you're opening up those big whale bottles and you want to take pictures of it, Instagram it, and put it out there. I'm hearing there's a can shortage, so I'm hearing there's going to be a lot more need for bottle openers soon. So this has got part of the logo for this year on it. So I am going to give that to Tom for
Thank you.
use here. And then this is the new logo for this year. So those who go on the wall, that will be what's going there. We will probably start selling these around Thanksgiving. So we watch your emails for renewals and upgrades and all that kind of fun stuff. And hopefully this was, the opener came from member suggestions, just like the koozie did last year too. So thanks to, Steve, thank you.
It's got some nice heft.
Yeah, it does.
Too.
Just don't beat anybody with it. It's got metal in it. It's got a sharp edge too.
It does.
So that's my spiel. Thank you so much for all your support, guys, especially this year, which has been absolutely crazy, ridiculous. We try to do what we can to make it fun for you guys, and hopefully we'll keep doing that. And gosh, hopefully by next spring we will be back to drinking beer together and having a lot of fun. Cheers to you guys. Thank you.
Cheers. Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Tom.
Thanks, sir.
See you guys at the shop.